All right, so let's jump into this deep dive. Today we're looking at debt amortization.
Okay.
And more specifically, amortization schedules.
Right.
You sent over all these articles and resources, and just glancing at them, it seems like this is a pretty important topic.
Yeah.
Especially for a company trying to, plan out their finances and all that.
Yeah. You know what I think is really interesting about this? Is that debt amortization schedules are like a financial roadmap for companies. And not just for mortgages, which is what people usually think of, for any kind of long-term debt. Whether it's business loans or equipment financing or whatever, it really lays out each payment, showing exactly how much is going toward the principal and how much is interest.
So it's like a GPS for your debt, guiding you towards becoming debt-free.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm curious, why is this so important for a company's overall schedule?
Well, if you think about it, if you're driving without a GPS, you might take a wrong turn and end up lost. And it's kind of the same thing with a company.
Right.
Without a clear amortization schedule, a company could lose track of its debt obligations, lead to missed payments and late fees, even damage their credit score.
Ouch, that does not sound good.
No.
One of the articles, Calendario de Amortización. Calendario de Amortización. La hoja de ruta para el pago de la deuda a largo plazo. Really emphasize the importance of this for financial planning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about so much more than just knowing when to make those payments.
Right.
It's about really understanding how your debt is structured.
Okay.
And how that impacts your cash flow and, how you can strategically manage it to achieve your financial goals.
So it's not just about avoiding the financial fender benders, it's about optimizing the whole journey.
Exactly.
Tell me more about how this schedule actually works in practice.
Sure. So imagine like a roadmap with clear milestones.
Okay.
Each milestone, representing a payment on your debt.
Right.
The amortization schedule shows you exactly how each payment reduces the total debt. How much is going towards the principal, how much is going toward interest.
Okay, that makes sense. But I've always been a little fuzzy on the whole principal versus interest thing.
No, it's an important distinction.
Estrategias clave para gestionar la amortización en la contabilidad empresarial. Really dove into that. Can you just clear that up for me?
Of course. So the principal is the original amount you borrowed, like the core of the debt.
Right.
Interest is essentially the cost of borrowing that money.
Okay.
It's kind of like a fee that you pay for using someone else's funds. And in the early stages of a loan, a larger portion of your payment often goes towards interest.
Oh, I see. So first you're mostly paying for the fee for borrowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than the money itself.
Exactly. And, that can feel frustrating.
Yeah, it's like you're paying rent.
Yeah.
The money that you borrowed.
Right.
No wonder it's important to really understand this.
Yeah, and that's where the amortization schedule comes in handy.
Okay.
Because it just lays it all out transparently. So you see, how much you're paying in interest.
Right.
How much is actually going toward reducing that principal and how those proportions change over time.
So it's all about transparency and predictability.
Exactly.
But are there different ways to actually structure these schedules?
Yeah, there are.
¿Qué la amortización de deuda? ¿Cómo amortizar una deuda? Mentions something called the French amortization system.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
It's a very common method.
Okay.
With the French system, your payments remain fixed throughout the loan term unless you have, a variable rate loan, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But the key is that the ratio of principal and interest within each payment changes over time.
Gotcha.
So, early on, more goes to interest.
Right.
But as you make those consistent payments, more and more starts chipping away at the principal.
Oh, so it's kind of like a seesaw that slowly tilts more and more towards paying off the principal?
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
But what happens if a company doesn't keep up with those payments? Or mismanages their debt?
Right.
Calendario de amortización, definición y métodos hinted at some of those risks.
Yeah, that's where things can get a little tricky.
Okay.
Without, proper financial control. A company might underestimate, the impact of interest payments on their cash flow,
right,
which can lead to a situation where they're struggling to meet their obligations. And that can create kind of a domino effect, impacting, their ability to invest in growth or pay their employees.
Right.
or just maintain their day-to-day operations.
So those missed payments or like miscalculations can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. It can impact everything.
Wow.
And it's not just the financial impact.
Okay.
It can actually damage the company's reputation.
How so?
Well, if you miss payments, that can lower your credit score,
right,
making it harder to secure future loans, more expensive. Investors might lose confidence.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Suppliers might be hesitant to extend credit.
So it's not just about the numbers. It's about maintaining that trust
and
credibility in the business world.
You got it.
I have to ask, though, are there specific administrative or financial controls that a company can use to avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, and that's something I'll explore more in the next part of our deep dive.
Right.
We'll look at specific strategies and tools that companies can use to really stay on top of their debt.
Okay.
Avoid those, financial potholes.
Right.
And even turn their debt management into a strategic advantage.
Okay, I'm hooked. This is way more fascinating than I initially thought.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic once you dig into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about those strategies in part 2.
Absolutely.
But let's hear more about that in part 2.
Sounds good. Welcome back. So, I'm really eager to dig into those administrative and financial controls that we touched on earlier, because understanding the amortization schedule is just the first step.
Okay.
It's kind of like having a map. You need to know how to use it.
Right.
To actually navigate effectively.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
So what are some of the key strategies that companies can use to stay on course and avoid those financial hazards?
Well, one really crucial aspect is establishing, clear financial policies and procedures.
Okay.
Estrategias clave para gestionar la amortización en la contabilidad empresarial. Really stress this. It's like creating a rule book for managing debt.
Yeah.
This includes things like, setting limits on how much debt the company can take, on establishing those approval processes for new loans, and implementing really strict monitoring systems.
So it's all about having those checks and balances in place to make sure that debt doesn't spiral out of control.
Exactly. You don't want it to get away from you.
No. Definitely not. What about the day-to-day management of those payments?
Yeah.
I can imagine it gets pretty messy when you've got multiple loans.
Oh, absolutely.
And varying due dates and all that.
It can get really overwhelming trying to keep track of everything.
Right.
That's why having a really robust accounting system is essential.
Okay.
You can think of it as your financial dashboard. It gives you a really clear view of all your debt obligations, your payment schedules, interest accruals, all of that stuff.
Que sirve el calendario de deuda a largo plazo. Financiación para empresas. I actually highlighted a specific tool, I think it was called.
Calendario de deuda a largo plazo.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm still a little fuzzy on what exactly that is.
Okay, yeah, so it's essentially a schedule that outlines all of the company's long-term debt obligations. And typically it covers a period of like 5 years or more.
Wow. Okay. So it's long term.
Yeah, it's a long-term view.
Okay.
And it really uses the principles of amortization to paint this comprehensive picture of how those debts are structured when they're due.
Okay.
And how they're impacting the company's cash flow.
It's like a zoomed out view of the company's debt landscape.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I can see why that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it really helps with the planning and the decision making.
Right. So you can see the big picture, identify potential issues.
Exactly. You can see those bottlenecks coming.
Right.
And make strategic adjustments.
Yeah. What if you see like a large principal payment looming in a few years? Yeah. You can start planning for that now. Exactly.
That's smart.
Yeah, you want to be prepared.
Yeah, it's like anticipating those sharp turns in the road and adjusting your speed accordingly.
You don't want to hit them head on.
No. But what if those turns are unavoidable?
Right.
What if a company faces like unexpected challenges or financial setbacks?
Yeah, well, that's where flexibility and adaptability really come into play.
Okay.
And that's something that El Calendario de Amortización, Definición y Métodos touched on a bit. Okay. Companies, they really need to be prepared to adjust their strategies as circumstances change.
Yeah.
That might involve, renegotiating loan terms, exploring refinancing options, or even considering debt consolidation.
So it's not about rigidly sticking to the plan, but having those tools and the knowledge to adapt.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Are there any specific financial ratios or metrics that can help companies kind of assess their debt situation?
Yes, there are.
And make those informed decisions.
Yeah. ¿Para qué sirve el calendario de deuda a largo plazo? Financiación para empresas. Talks about one in particular. It's called the weighted average maturity of long-term debt.
Ooh. That sounds a little technical.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Can you break that down for me?
Yeah. So essentially what it measures is the average time it takes a company to repay all their outstanding long-term debt.
Okay.
So think of it as like the average lifespan of your debt.
Okay.
A longer average maturity might mean you have more time to repay.
Right.
But it also means you're carrying those obligations for longer.
So it's a trade-off.
Exactly.
Between time and flexibility.
Exactly. You've got it.
But how does this metric actually help companies make those decisions?
Well, it gives them insights into their risk profile.
Okay.
You know, a company with a longer weighted average maturity, they might have locked in lower interest rates for a longer period.
Right.
Which could be good in certain market conditions.
Yeah, okay. So that could be an advantage.
It could.
But also, as you were saying, it means they're committed to those payments for a longer time.
Right.
So it limits their flexibility a little bit.
It does a little bit.
So it's all about balance.
Exactly.
Understanding the trade-offs.
Exactly.
And using that to make the best decision for your situation.
Yeah. And that's where understanding this metric can be really helpful.
Okay. We've talked about establishing those financial controls.
Right.
And leveraging accounting systems and using key metrics. Are there any specific tools or technologies that companies can use to kind of streamline this whole process?
Oh, absolutely. You know, in today's digital age, there's so many software programs and online tools designed to help businesses manage their debt amortization.
Herramientas y calculadoras para crear su propio calendario de amortización, calendario de amortización, calendario de amortización, la hoja de ruta para el pago de la deuda a largo plazo. I think that was the article that mentioned actually creating your own amortization schedule. That's great that there are tools out there.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier.
To make that process less daunting.
It really does.
What do those tools kind of do?
Well, they can do things like automate the calculations, generate, custom amortization schedules, track payment history, even provide alerts for upcoming deadlines.
So it's like having a virtual financial assistant.
It really is, yeah.
To help you stay organized and on top of your debt.
Exactly. And it takes some of that, manual work off your plate.
Right. It can help reduce human error as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And they can also, help you model different scenarios. Like if you're thinking about making extra payments or refinancing a loan, you can see how that would impact your overall debt and make a more informed decision.
This is really starting to paint a much clearer picture for me.
Good.
It's not just about crunching numbers, but about using those numbers strategically to gain control of your debt and actually use it as a tool for growth.
Yeah, I love that. That's a fantastic way to put it.
And I think that's what we're going to explore more in part 3 of this deep dive.
We'll look at how understanding debt amortization can really empower businesses to make those strategic decisions, optimize their financial performance, and achieve their long-term goals.
I'm looking forward to part 3. This is way more captivating than I initially imagined.
It's a really interesting topic.
Let's dive back in and see how this all comes together.
Sounds great.
All right, so we're back and ready to really dig into this whole strategic side of debt amortization.
Okay.
I'm curious, we've talked about the mechanics, the controls, and all the tools.
Right.
But how does this understanding actually help businesses grow and thrive?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's like having all these pieces of a puzzle, and now we get to see how they all fit together to really create this complete picture of financial well-being for a company.
Okay.
One of the things that Cómo gestionar la deuda a largo plazo con confianza really highlighted for me was this idea of using debt amortization to create a proactive debt reduction strategy.
Okay, so not just managing debt, but actively working to reduce it.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does amortization play into that?
Well, think about your amortization schedule as a roadmap to becoming debt-free. It allows you to set those clear targets and track your progress and make strategic decisions to to accelerate that journey.
So, for example, you could make additional principal payments.
Exactly.
Even if they're small.
Even small ones can make a difference over time.
Right.
To chip away at that debt faster and reduce your overall interest.
So it's about kind of taking control and not letting the debt control you.
You've got it.
I can see how that could be really empowering.
Oh, yeah.
For business owners.
For sure. And it can actually have a ripple effect.
Really?
Throughout the whole organization.
How so?
Well, when employees see that, the company is actively managing its debt.
Right.
And making progress towards financial stability, it just, it boosts morale.
Yeah.
It creates this greater sense of shared purpose.
So it's about fostering a culture of responsibility and financial awareness.
Absolutely.
But what about those situations where debt is kind of unavoidable?
Right.
Like if a company is looking to, expand or make a strategic acquisition or something?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's where understanding, debt amortization becomes even more important.
Okay.
¿Qué es la amortización de deuda? ¿Cómo amortizar una deuda? Had a really interesting example about this.
Okay.
They talked about how a company can use amortization to evaluate the financial viability of a potential investment.
So it's not just about managing existing debt, but it's also about analyzing future debt.
Exactly.
How does that work?
So let's say a company wants to buy, a new piece of equipment.
Okay.
But they need to take out a loan to finance it.
Right.
They can use amortization to kind of project the cost of that loan over time.
Okay.
Including, those interest payments.
So they're basically factoring the debt repayment schedule into the investment analysis.
Exactly.
Okay, that's smart.
Yeah, they can compare, those projected debt costs to the potential revenue that the new equipment will generate. Right. And if the revenue outweighs the costs,
then it might be a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about making informed decisions and not just kind of blindly jumping into a deal that could put their financial health at risk.
You got it.
What about those more complex scenarios like mergers and acquisitions? I know estrategias clave para gestionar la amortización en la contabilidad empresarial. Touched on this a bit.
Yeah, that's where things can get really, really complicated.
Okay.
Because when two companies merge, you're not just, combining their assets.
Right.
You're also combining their debts.
Right. You've got two different sets of loans, potentially.
Yeah.
With different terms and interest rates and all that.
Exactly. It can be a real mess.
Yeah, it sounds like a financial jigsaw puzzle.
It really is.
But that's where understanding amortization can be a real tool.
It is a powerful
tool to help kind of manage that.
Yeah, it lets those companies model, different scenarios.
Okay.
And explore, options for restructuring that debt.
Right.
And make strategic decisions that benefit the newly merged company.
So it's about using amortization to create a smooth financial transition and a really solid foundation for the future.
Exactly.
It sounds like there's a real art.
There is.
To managing debt effectively.
Yeah. It's not just about crunching numbers. It's about understanding,
right,
the nuances and the strategies and the long-term implications.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the most important things we've learned from this whole deep dive is that, this ongoing learning and exploration is key.
Okay.
The financial world is constantly changing.
Right.
And it's so important to stay on top of new tools and strategies and best practices.
And that's where resources like these articles and even, podcasts like ours can play a role in that.
Absolutely.
In helping business owners stay informed.
Yeah, it's all about demystifying these concepts and making them, accessible to everyone. Because financial health is the foundation of any successful business.
For sure.
And understanding debt amortization is a crucial part of that.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the basic, all the way to these strategic applications.
But I hope that our listeners, have gained a deeper appreciation for this whole concept of debt amortization.
Yeah, it's more than just numbers.
Yeah, and how it can be a tool not just for managing debt, but for achieving real financial success.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive.
Although it was my pleasure. I always enjoy talking about this stuff.
I can tell. And for our listeners out there, don't be intimidated by debt. Understand it.
Yeah.
Manage it and use it strategically to reach your goals.
You got it.
Great advice. Thanks again. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.
Sounds good.
And keep striving for that financial well-being.
Absolutely.
you.